My name is Carlos Mendes. I am a business development manager at GDOC in the UK. With me today to make this presentation is my colleague Tony Kelly. He's a professional services consultant at GDOC. With us today to make this presentation is Martin Bishop. She's a technical account manager for RSD. Some of you might be familiar with Martin Bishop in particular, who used to be part of the technical account management in the UK. We have two main objectives today. The first one is to give you an overview on EOS 360, and secondly, we want to get any questions you have around EOS 360. Now, to go over this overview, we have put together an agenda that you can see on your screen. It's made of 7 points, and as you can see, the last point being questions and answers. This WebEx system has a chat facility, so I invite you all to submit your questions as we are speaking, and when we get to point number 7, we are going to respond them. Good, so we are ready to start. We have allocated an hour to make this presentation, and I'm sure we're going to stick to this time frame. Next slide, please, Tony. Now, the first point we want to talk to you about is this partnership between RSD and GDOC. Sometime in 2016, RSD was looking for a partner who could look after the customers in the UK, in Ireland and Norway. RSD and GDOC have been doing business together for a good number of years. We share similar customers, so some of the customers RSD are customers of GDOC. We operate in the same business, which is the output management. We are lucky to have some staff members of RSD now working for GDOC. That is the case of Tony Kelly and Sue Wenborn. So when the management of both companies start talking on this possibility of us becoming the partners, it was like a no-brainer. So they decided to go for it, and what we're doing since February is, me personally and Tony in the UK, is contacting each of you to make introductions and organize technical account meetings, and most importantly, present this new generation EOS 360. Now, what does this partnership mean to you? Well, from February this year, we are going to be your #1 point of contact. So I invite you to have us in your mind when you need support, when you have questions about invoicing, when you want to discuss new modules, we will be able to help you. After this presentation, I'm going to send this deck individually to each of you, and I will include as well the details of each of the people you need to contact, either if it's support, if it's invoicing, if it's your technical account manager, Tony Kelly, or even myself. Good. I also want to spend a minute or two explaining to you what else we do at GDOC. In GDOC, we are a well-known organization that focuses on one technology, which is the customer communication management. Basically, this technology, customer communication management, helps organizations to improve customer experience. And the way we do it is by redesigning, or how I like to say, rebooting the way they communicate with the customers. We transform from paper-out telephony in communications to a far more structured and personalized communications. The communications that are dynamic, fully interactive, and that are truly meaningful for our customers. So this is what we do. We, as I said before, we operate in very similar verticals as RSD, which is the banking, the insurance, the telecoms, and print service providers. We have been in the market for 20+ years. We have offices in 5 countries in Europe, and we are around 100 professionals. Next, please. Good. Now, before we move on into the main topic of today, which is the overview of EOS 360, I just want to touch on 2 very important points. One being the importance that mainframe still has for many companies, and I also want to touch base on your priorities, or what we consider to be your priorities. So, talking about the importance of mainframe. Mainframe has been in the market for more than 50 years and is a technology that is still is considered to be very powerful, highly reliable, and highly critical. We have here some examples of those, why it's so powerful. Billions of transactions every day go through mainframe these days. Many organizations, for example, in the Fortune 500, more than 70%, still work on mainframe to provide business transactions to customers. And it's critical because more than 92 of the 100 largest banks, for example, and in top insurers, work on mainframe. Next, Tony, please. Good. This is now moving on to your priorities. There was a survey conducted by Deloitte not a long time ago, where they have asked CIOs globally, what are your main priorities? And out of this survey, 4 key priorities came up. One being the budget control, or the cost on IT effectiveness, the security and availability as the second one, the business agility and reliability. Now, why we mention these priorities at this stage? Well, what you're going to hear from Tony and Martin in the next few minutes, we, with EOS 360, we help you, or we can help you to address or reinforce some of these priorities. So as we go along, have these priorities in your mind and see how we can help you to address them with EOS 360. Now I pass the microphone to my colleague, Tony.
Thank you, Carlos. In 2014, RSD conducted a customer survey. Around 250 customers were polled, and I'd like to present the eventually led to the development of EOS 360. So I'm going to take you through the key points of the survey and then explain the EOS 360 modules in more detail. As Carlos mentioned, there's a question and answer session at the end, so please feel free to give us your questions. So here are the 5 key points. Customers really felt they needed continuous availability. Any critical application needs to be available all the time. One of the key things that RSD identified is that, and the customers asked for, is that they wanted the EOS spool to expand automatically. If a spool file fills up, there's a long outage which eats into the availability of the application. Customers wanted a performance improvement around archiving. The archive master index is now a vSAM file, as opposed to previously being a sequential file. The vSAM file has an index, and that allows for faster searching. Customers wanted optimized new and improved dashboards to present activity statistics around EOS. Improved access to reports and new interfaces. RSD have allowed EOS to integrate with Microsoft, and the clients now are HTML5. One of the benefits of HTML5 client is that there's no dependency on Java. There's also a web admin interface, so that admin tasks like adding users to reports, doing profile changes, can be decentralized and freeing IT staff from non-technical tasks. There's improvements between ZOS and Open. There's a product that RSD have which is called the Bridge. We'll talk a bit more about that later on in the presentation. But the Bridge is used to transfer reports from EOS on the Z platform to EOS on an open system platform, so that during periods of high and costly MIPS consumption, users can be switched to view their reports from open systems, particularly during the 4-hour rolling average, thereby reducing costs. So we're going to explain Bridge a little bit more later in the presentation. And now I'd like to talk more around the modules of EOS 360. So this next few slides show the evolution from EOS 2.1 to EOS 360. Now EOS 360 is comprised of 5 modules. Each module has its own scope of functionality. We'll start with EOS Server, includes the core engine functions. EOS Process, which is all to do with capture and ingestion of reports into EOS. EOS Access, so that's thin client. EOS Protect around security and privacy. And EOS Cockpit, which allows users to use dashboards and reports to monitor and audit their EOS system. So this slide shows the current EOS 2.1 modules on the left, and I'll now explain more detail each of the 5 EOS 360 modules. So EOS Server, main technical improvement is around archive and restore improvement. I mentioned the archive master index is in a different format, and also the spool expands automatically. So if we start with the performance improvement around the archive master index, the performance has been improved by changing the format from sequential to an indexed VSAM file. That allows for faster searches, and also will give an improved performance around your overnight batch processing. We have some examples here. If we look at environment 2, there's 2.9 million archive reports in this environment, and some of the use cases, common use cases are shown in the table below. One of them being a search on a form, which is a report, and between a certain date range. And that can be up to 40 to 70 times faster with the new format of Archive Master Index. The benefits are for EOS administrators, less time to find reports if they need to do large volume of restores, shorter delay for the business users to access their restored reports, and better business continuity because the Archive Master Index is also now auto-expandable. As mentioned before, EOS spool now expands automatically, taking away the fear that you're going to have a service outage if your spool fills up. We have an example here from testing. Customer 1, 500 users balanced across 3 EVTs, which is an EOS system in its own right, 5 capture tools, and an EOS spool of 10 gig. If that gets full, the EOS admin has to stop everything. So stop access to EOS, close down capture, perform an unload of the spool, reallocate it with more space and reload the spool, and then restart everything. So that can take an outage during the day or any time during the day. EOS process, that's around capture. The main technical improvements, the EOS writer and the EOS FSS, functional subsystem, which is another capture tool, now have a log of captured reports, which is very useful because prior to that you would need to go into the EOS environment itself and interrogate the spool to see if a report had arrived. Now you can simply ask an operator to interrogate the writer and look at the log. Now, line mode reports are supported now by all capture tools. And here we can see just a diagram of output mode along the top, output format, and capture tool along the bottom. So an example where line mode is now captured by FSS. If you have a customer who captures AFP and PDF with the FSS and suddenly has to cope with capturing line mode data, the user doesn't have to create a separate writer. It can now all be done through the FSS. And by far the most development has been around EOS Access, with technical improvements around web services. There's now an HTML5 client, and one of the benefits of HTML5, it doesn't have a dependency on Java. Previously, thin client users might have had issues if they were not on the right version of Java. There's a new Outlook add-in, which allows users to view reports directly from the standard email interface of Microsoft Outlook. EOS reports will be accessible through a new tab in the Outlook client, similar to the tab you see at the bottom, namely the email tab or the calendar tab. EOS profile management can now be undertaken via a new web interface for administrators, allowing tasks to be performed by business users, freeing up IT staff for non-technical issues. And EOS now integrates with SharePoint. So some of the benefits of EOS Access: improve user experience, easier access to your EOS reports, a secure interface from any browser or device, fast access to EOS reports from the Outlook client, and easier integration of EOS reports into content management and other applications. And RSD is using the latest architecture possible, Angular 2 framework and REST web services. So EOS Protect, that's all around security and encryption. So a strong encryption capability to protect sensitive reports. Data sets like the spool or report index can be encrypted, and they stay encrypted for the whole of the life cycle. So if you unload a spool or report index, write it to tape and send it off site, it remains encrypted, and the only way you can access that data is via EOS. Field masking is if you give a customer or a user access to a report, but there's still some sensitive data on there they shouldn't see, we now have the ability to mask fully or partially sensitive fields in report displays, or indeed when the report is printed. So EOS Cockpit, that's everything to do with auditing. So Cockpit allows the user to get added visibility into EOS activity, identify any negative trends, high and low usage, and it also has information written in a JSON format, which allows easier integration of that data into business intelligence tools. Here's an example. of a dashboard which shows the top 10 active users, number of lines processed during a report print, and number of current connections to a particular server. High and low usage information, CPU usage during, for example, a certain period of time, the length of time a user's been logged into the system, or even if they have logged into the system, and number of IOs performed during doing processing. So that's my part of the presentation finished now. Martin Bishop of RSD is going to take over from here and explain migration to EOS 360.
Okay, thank you, Tony. That's given everybody a good look at what's in EOS 360, and there's obviously some very big features in there that people will want. The crunch question for a lot of the operations people is going to be, well, how do I upgrade it then? And the good news is that the upgrade is extremely simple. Gone are the days where you have to do an unload and reload of the spool, which would take ages, and the same with the index. The format of those files stays the same, and so realistically you do what you would do with most applications: stop everything from running, just bring down EVT and the writer, back up the environment. There's the only job really to run after that, after copying across your load libraries, is just running a report index utility that will set it to the new level. And because the AMI does change to KSDS, then you'll need to migrate the AMI to the new format. The AMI typically is not too big a file, and it's an optional step anyway. Some people may not want to change the AMI initially, but I think in most cases that's part of the main benefit. Reinitialize a couple of files, start it up, and away we go. And the whole exercise wouldn't be looking at taking more than a couple of hours, probably less, except in very large environments. So straightforward to do the upgrade. Now, the next thing, Tony mentioned this EOS Bridge, and I want to give you some more details now about EOS Bridge. This is RSD's idea, where a lot goes on in the ZOS EOS environment, and a lot of costs associated with ZOS are around the storage, and also around the CPU utilization for people accessing their reports. And so this on the left-hand side is showing how EOS typically works with just a ZOS server. So the report types at the top, AFP, PDF, line mode, whatever, they get captured, split, table of contents can be created. The reports then are stored on the spool, the database is updated, at the end of it they're archived, and the reports become available on the online server, and the end users access it from EOS Access or a client or 3270. So that's the standard process, and there's a lot of work has gone in at sites with what's been created on EOS ZOS, the forms codes, etc., and all the profiles are long-standing files, and they need to be retained. But with the bridge idea, what we can now do is the report still gets captured on ZOS, and the splits and the tocs are still defined over there. But then the physical report data is moved across to EOS on the Open Systems platform, whether it's Unix, Linux, Windows. We transfer across the report content, the tocs and the indexes, and now when the end users access their reports, they're accessing them from Open Systems. So there's now not the load required for the EVT task for online viewing, And also, you can move your archives across to open systems as well, so you can take advantage of cheaper storage on open systems. So that's what the bridge is. If you go to the next slide, so just on the left there, this is what stays on ZOS. Your report definitions, your forms codes, etc., are still there. All the user definitions and the profiles, etc., still on ZOS, and the capture is still done on ZOS, because typically you're capturing output from ZOS applications. But as soon as they're captured, the indexes, the table of contents, the physical report contents transferred across to the Open Systems platform, and then the end users are viewing them from Open Systems. So next slide. So how's that going to help you save your mainframe costs? Well, I've alluded to what the answer to that question is going to be, and in the next slide you'll see something mentioned called the rolling 4-hour average. This is how most mainframe vendors are now charging utilization of mainframes. You don't just buy a big box and pay cash for it. They charge you for the amount you use it, and it's now based on what's called a rolling 4-hour average. And this particular graph shows the light blue are all non-EOS tasks, batch jobs or other applications. The dark blue, or the slightly darker blue at the tip of some of those light blue blocks are the EOS batch processing, delete report index, the archive suites, etc. But the dark blue tips on some of those are when the end users come in and want to start viewing reports. And so you'll see that typically happens at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning when they first rock in. They want to view their reports while they're drinking their first cup of coffee. And that can be quite a load on the average. Now, you can schedule the batch reports overnight in slightly different times and spread the load, but unless you're going to get your users to start working shifts and coming in at different times, you're pretty much stuck with that 7 o'clock till about 10 o'clock viewing peak. So and here, for instance, that was showing an average there of 946, a rolling average, and by using EOS Bridge, you'll now see that all those dark blue blocks have now disappeared, and that's because end users are no longer, or would no longer, need to utilize the mainframe for viewing their reports. That would be transferred across to the Open Systems platform. And so now in this example, the rolling average has gone down from 946 to 903, which is MIPS, and that's a saving of 5% on the total mainframe utilization. And for people among you that are having to pay that bill, 5% saving of your total mainframe MIPS utilization in a financial term is a huge amount of money. And so that's where the benefit is. Yeah, the viewing of the reports moved across to EOS Bridge and on the Open Systems platform. And we can help you, on the next slide, we can help you identify what your potential savings could be. You don't need to install the bridge to then work out what the savings are. If you provide us with the output of the SCRT, which is a utility you can run, the subcapacity reporting tool, and that will identify where the peak utilization is, and then we would ask that you dump out those 3 different SMF records, 30, 70, and 72, for the 5 hours preceding that peak. Tell us the name of your EVT, started task, and within 15 days we'll come back to you with an idea on what we believe the savings are that you could achieve by implementing EOS Bridge. So that's something that we're doing for customers now. You don't install anything, you provide us with the figures, and we come back and tell you what that's going to, what that potential savings is going to be. So Now, what we were going to do, I can either do a demo of the new EOS Access and the Outlook add-in. I can do it from my laptop using my test data. Or what we were actually going to try doing is, if the presentation gets passed across to me, we have a couple of videos already created, and what we'll try and do is show you those videos. I'll ask Pauline just to give me feedback when they start as to whether they're too loud or not. And we can send you links to those videos as well. They're available up on YouTube, but because they're prepared speeches, etc., it's a little bit better than me making stuff up as I go along. But happy to show you on my environment afterwards. So I think if you pass that presentation button across to me. It needs to go one more, I think. That's it, thank you. No, it's gone back to presenter. Can that come back to me? Thank you. And now in here, if I share, what I want to do is to share that application. So the first one I'm going to show you is the Access one.
This is a demonstration of the new user interface, EOS Access. RSD introduces EOS 360, the new generation of output management, composed of 5 integrated modules, including EOS Access. EOS Access reinvents your way of accessing your reports through a new and powerful user interface. These new functionalities include secure access to reports from any device through a modern interface, and easy access to EOS reports through a Microsoft Outlook add-in, and finally, an integration with existing web applications via the use of web services or APIs. The report list available to the user now appears on the main screen, and on the left sidebar is the list of different EOS environments you're allowed to access. You now have the ability to hide the environment list, enabling you to maximize the display of the report section. In the above navigation pane appears the same list of environments and also the different types of views: private, partner, users. These icons to the top right now allow you to generate filters, select the view, refresh the report list, export, write notes, restore, print, and delete if the report is authorized. An icon next to that, Settings, allows you to select dynamically the window layout, selecting the place and the width of your columns displaying in the interface. You can also sort your reports alphabetically in ascending or descending order. By simply clicking on the column header, you can add a filter to access those desired reports. For example, reports starting with the M and an asterisk, then hit Enter. You can also select an existing filter in order to access a specific set of reports. In this example, we used reports created in September of 2016. Now we open one report. You can navigate to that report using the left top index list and select the desired section of that report. You can now open the section of that report for George Romero and select others if necessary. While in the same window, I can now open a PDF report. You can now select the appropriate layout using the icon at the top right to view both reports at the same time. In our example, the reports can be done one above the other or side by side. The expand mode is also available when the two reports are open. Select the icon list to go back to your report list. As component level access, you can also access the control panel to modify your EOS client. For example, you can update the list of servers you connect to, your application settings, date formats, buffer
Okay, I gather the sound on that wasn't very good, in which case I do apologise. I should have just shown everything from my screen, I guess. I'll pass it across to Carlos to finish the presentation. I'm happy to show you the Outlook add-in just on my screen. If anybody wants to see it, I'll wait for you to give me some feedback on that.
Okay, good. So if you want to give me control either to me or to Tony, as you wish.
Tony currently has it.
Yeah.
Good. So Tony, would you mind just put the screen on the after these videos we have the elasticity option screen. You could.
Yeah, I'm showing that now.
Good, thank you. Because for a reason I just cannot see it. Maybe do you need to allow share your screen? Maybe we are not seeing it yet.
Okay, hang on a second, please.
Don't worry, take your time. Perfect. Thank you, Tony.
Okay.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Tony. Excellent presentation. This slide on EOS 360 elasticity is not necessarily a product feature. It's more like a commercial advantage that EOS 360 has for US customers. In the past, when our customers were looking to make changes in their environment, such as moving or making site transfers or moving to a new CPO or passing the solution to an outsourcer, there was a contractual obligation or liability to be paid. And as this was becoming very frequent with some customers, RSD has introduced this elasticity option, where in exchange of an annual fee, you can do as many changes as you want in your environment. Think about it like an insurance premium that you pay upfront, and you can do as many or multiple changes in your environment without incurring on additional costs. So this is what EOS 360 elasticity is. So the next slide is, we're getting very close to the end of the presentation. Before going into Q&A, we have 3 questions from you. Thank you very much. But I just want to go back to my slide where I talk about the priorities. And as you saw from the presentation from Martin and Tony, how each of these identified priorities with EOS 360, we address some of those issues, either if it's the availability or if it's the budget control with EOS Bridge, for example, the reliability of the solution and the agility. So I think we responded, I like very much how EOS 360 responded to your priorities very well. So this is the end of the presentation. The time is very good. We are going now to move into the questions that some of you have submitted. Tony and Martin, I will appreciate if you help us responding them. The first question we have is EOS 360 compatible with ZOS version 2.2? Martin, do you want to respond to that one?
I was just, I was talking without unmuting myself, which is why you couldn't hear me. Yes, it is. Yes, the current 2.1 is compatible, and obviously EOS 360 is compatible straight away with 2.2 for anybody that's either already gone that way or is planning that route. EOS 360 is fully compatible with 2.2.
Thank you. An additional question we have is, when is EOS 360 available, and will my existing EOS Thin client work with EOS 360?
Okay, well, I'm happy to take both of those as well. The availability, EOS 360 has actually been out in beta testing at some customer sites since October last year, and became GA before Christmas. So it's out there now. It's installed, and some sites have already moved to EOS 360 in production. So it's there and available and ready for people to move to. The question about the thin client is interesting, because obviously with 360 comes a new client, the EOS Access client, but not everybody's going to want to move everything all in one go. And so the good news is that the existing thin client will connect to EOS 360, so you can move to EOS Access on a gradual basis and to the Outlook plugin. But obviously, if all you want is just the new client EOS Access is not backward compatible onto 2.1. So the current client will work with EOS 360, and you can move across to EOS Access in your own time.
Excellent. Thank you, Martin. Well, I'm not seeing any additional question, and this is the end of today's webinar. I want to thank you all for being part of this presentation, and we look forward to seeing you very soon, either to talk about in more detail on EOS 360 or running a technical account meeting in the next, I don't know, weeks or months. And that's it. Thank you.